In my last video, toward the end of it, I brought in some tomato cuttings and I put them in the little grow boxes, the little containers in the bottom of this wooden contraption that I call my phone booth. It's basically a grow box. It has some lights in the top, and someone asked me if I could maybe do a little video on how I built that. Well, here it is. Now, this little video, I've got the do-it-yourselfer in mind. I mean, you can buy one of these grow boxes that looks something like this, and I guess for my taste they're a bit pricey. But if you get right down to the basics of what you need to build one of these things, and if you're a little handy at it, you can do this quite cheaply. And it's a lot of fun if you like to make things like that. So with that, let's get on with this, and I'll show you how I build it. Now, the first thing you want to do is get yourself some plywood and cut out a piece of plywood that's going to match the footprint of how big you want your grow box to be. Now, I've chosen to be about 2 feet by 2 feet. Now, you can choose that size, or you can go 3 feet by 4 or 1 by whatever you want to do, but pick what size you want and cut out a piece of plywood to match that dimension. Now, the plywood need only be like a ½ an inch or maybe thicker than that, but I wouldn't go any thinner than a ½ inch, but it doesn't need to be that strong, because remember, this is what your grow box is going to sit on, and whether it's a tank of water or a tank of full of dirt or whatever, this is what your grow medium is going to sit on, so it needs to be able to support some weight. The next thing you're going to want to do is to cut some 2x4 dimensional lumber, or approximately that kind of lumber, to lengths so that it covers the bottom like a picture frame, as shown here in this little illustration. Now, keep in mind this picture is upside down, so the screws that you want to put in actually go through the plywood and into the frame. This is going to be your bottom platform. Now you need to get some caster wheels and attach them to the bottom of the platform that you just built. Now, you can get these caster wheels at most hardware stores, and you've got to size them such that if you look at this picture, you can see there's a mounting plate with 4 screw holes in it. You got to have that mounting plate the right size so that it will mate to your 2x4s that you attached as a frame for this bottom platform that you built. So when you're all done attaching these 4 caster wheels to each one of the corners, you should have 4 wheels on the bottom of your platform, kind of like this. Coming in from the left there, you see some poles right there. What that is 1x2 dimensional lumber that you can get at any lumber store. Now, I've cut mine to 6 feet tall because that's how tall I want my phone booth. Now, you can cut it shorter or taller than that depending on how tall or short you want your phone booth. Now, what you need to do is attach 4 of these, 2 on each side as shown here, with screws on the bottom, just some kind of grabber screws I call them, but secure them on the bottom because that's going to be your frame. Okay, next you're going to want to cut a 2-foot long piece of plywood that's about 1 foot thick, depending on how thick you want it. I would recommend 1 foot. And this is going to be a band around the top. So you need to cut 4 of these pieces and secure them around the top on the 4 sides. And you're probably going to have to cut the plywood a little bit shorter, a little bit longer, so that they'll fit without overlapping each other too much. And this is going to be your structural support for basically the structure of the phone booth. Now let's talk about the top plate that you can see coming down here in this picture and resting on that band that you just installed. Now, this top plate is what you're going to affix your lighting fixtures to. Now, this plate just rests on that band of plywood that you just installed. It's not attached to it. It just sits on it, and what it does is it overlaps 2 opposite sides, and that's what supports it. And then the other 2 sides, it's narrow enough to go in between them, and it doesn't need to be airtight or anything like that. It just sits on top, and it just sits there. That's really what it does. Now there's a lot of possibilities on how you can set the lighting up on this top plate. Let me show you what I did.
These are lamp sockets. They're very cheap when you buy them. So you hook the electrical up there. And basically what you do is when you set them down on something, you put screws in here, or maybe there, and then you can hold them down. And they come in, this one's porcelain. It's a kind of a cement kind of stuff. And this one here is plastic. This one's plastic right here. Well, anyway, I don't want to get it out. I can't get it out of there with one hand, but it looks the same. Now, I had a whole bunch of these from another project that was left over. And the phone booth that I built, I used 16 of these things laid out, you know, kind of in a row like that and in a square. Okay, so now the advantage of using this is that most light bulbs that you buy, at least in the U.S., fits that kind of a socket. This is a very standard thing, and I think you could probably find sockets like that, gee, going back maybe 100 years. That's how long they've been around. They're very cheap, so these are easy to buy, and you can get, you know, regular light bulbs, and you can also get real grow lights, you know, true grow lights with that kind of a socket on the bottom. So that's why I chose these.
Okay, so what I did with these light sockets that I had, I just laid them down, all 16 of them, on the one side of this top plate, and then wired them up, and then flipped them over and laid it down on top of this that support band on the telephone booth. And that's really all there was to it.
Now, when you're done building the basic frame and you've got your film attached to it, you can opt for doors on it, which I did with this one. And really all that means is you put two sides with your film on it, and then you leave two sides or one side. Maybe, see, I've got two doors on this one. You leave two doors without the polyfilm, without the reflective film on it. And then you just make a door out of this. Now, as you can see here, there's a hinge there and a hinge there. And there's a detail. You can probably see how I did that. And this is simply a frame that I put together. And let's see if we can show you how that's done. You can probably see it. It's just a frame with the same 1x2 type lumber that this is. And I've got just some corner pieces here for attached with screws for rigidity and strength. And the same with this door. And then I've just attached the film to the inside of the door. And here we'll show you this one. Same thing. That's the way this focuses. There we go. It's just a framework. And there's corners just to give the frame some rigidity. And again, see right here, there's a couple of hinges, one here and one down there. If you can see it because of the light. Yeah, there we go. Let's try to get a better shot. But as you can see it, there's a hinge right in there. And the hinge basically is just set so you can open it up. Now, what I've got here is, this is just a magnetic hasp or a catch. And there's the other piece of it right there. You can see it's screwed in. And this is just kitchen cabinet stuff. You can go get that in the hardware store. You just close it and it holds it still. Well, that Mylar material that I've used to cover the outside of my phone booth or my indoor grow box is basically it's something you can get at a camping store. It's called an emergency blanket. But all this is a sheet of Mylar that's got a very highly reflective coating on one side. And let me show you a close-up here of the label, so you can see if it'll focus on that. I think it is, but what it basically says is that it's a emergency blanket, great for camping, hiking, and then it tells you how big it is and so forth. Now, when I bought these, I've got about 3 or 4 of them left. They do last quite well, unless you're pretty abusive with them. Like ruffling around all the time, they will wear out. But I think these were like $1 or a couple dollars or something like that, and it's 52 inches by 84 inches. So basically, almost 5 feet by 8 feet is how big one of these things is. So you can see one of these can probably nearly cover 3/4 of a whole grow box, like I've been, like the one I made. Anyway, that's all it is. It's pretty cheap. And I used, like I said, I used just an office type stapler to staple it onto the pine that I used for the frame. How much light are you going to need? Well, I put in, as you can see with this, I put in 16 lights in there. And originally I put 16 lights with 16,000 lumens apiece, and they were this kind of a light. Now, when you buy light bulbs, they generally have a little information sheet on them. As you can see, 1,600 lumens apiece and 16 light bulbs. So that gives you about 25,000 lumens. Now, that's kind of what you want. Now, the other thing that you want to get is you want to get two kinds of light bulbs. And you'll see that you'll get some that have a warm, they'll be soft, warm, or something like that on the top, but they'll be down in this range of the light spectrum. And then you want to get some that are up in this area. What you'll see is it'll say 5,000 or 7,000 up here, and then there'll be a little caret and arrow over here. So you want to get a mixture of those two if you're not going to use actual grow lights. So this is how you can get by with being economical. But as you can see, you can buy grow lights, and I've got one right here. See, that one right there is a real grow light, and it's got the entire spectrum. But these other ones are a mixture. See, some are yellowish and some are whitish, and that's where you get both ends of the spectrum. And these grow lights, the reason I don't use those too much is they're quite pricey. But as you can see, they fit in the same socket and they work the same way.
Now, to wrap this up, I just wanted to show you a photograph here that I took, I think it was last year sometime. And what you got in here is there's cucumber plants on the sides, and right in the middle you can see a lettuce plant. I think that's a red sales lettuce or something like that. But anyway, then there's a couple of blossoms you can see too. Now, these grew quite well, and they being indoors in my basement, they did great. So this thing, when the weather's cold outside and you can't grow things, this works pretty good.